Welcome to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of any of the other channels? And that's because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They say this all the time, they talk down to us, they think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of The Herd with Colin Cowherd, talking about, apparently it's coming out that Patrick Mahomes is more of a game manager than none other than Brock Purdy. I could see Colin going through this with a few directions. And this whole idea of a game manager is a bad thing, or that you're managing games, I don't really get it, because again, the GOAT Tom Brady has managed himself to a lot of Super Bowl victories and has become the GOAT. It's not always all about the flash and what you can do, but I get it. We live in a world where flash is amazing and great, and we need that stimulus, right? We need these high points, and Patrick Mahomes burst out on the scene and was just, the definition of beast mode, honestly. And it was exciting and exhilarating, and you were like seeing things that you have just never really seen before, and it was like, oh my God. And so when he doesn't do that, you're like, oh, well, he's just, what good is he then? He's just managing the game. And that Brock Purdy has been pushing the ball down the field more and has had more big plays. And so now they're saying, see, Brock Purdy is more him than Patrick Mahomes. And it's like, we're getting lost right now in the weeds here. But let's see what Colin has to say, and we can kind of unpack it from there.
Why Patrick Mahomes is more of a game manager than Brock Purdy. Oh, boy. Okay, let's just pretend Patrick Mahomes and Purdy are both game managers. Even if it's true, Mahomes is a different type of game manager. And I'll give you an example. Mahomes, he's doing what he can as a game manager to put his young offense in the best position to win, and they still led the NFL in drops. But he's putting his team in the best position he can to do the most they possibly can despite their shortcomings. It's the opposite. In San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan and that offensive roster is doing all they can to elevate Brock Purdy. So even if they're both using the same term, game manager.
Well, I don't think that's completely fair. I understand, and I've spoken at length about this, is that it's a little unfair to Brock Purdy because he's just so much younger. And when I say immature, I just mean his game is immature. Don't think of it as like emotionally. He's incredibly emotionally mature, and it's one of the best things he has going for him. But obviously he's young. He's early in his career. And so when you're surrounded by these seasoned elite vets like McCaffrey, Debo, and a coach play caller Shanahan, right? Brock Purdy is your limiting factor because he has more progress within his career to make, and his game needs to mature and develop more. That's just a fact. No matter how amazing you think Brock Purdy is, he's not as good at the quarterback position as McCaffrey is at whatever position you want to consider him, or Debo. And that's okay. That's totally okay. Again, the example that I use, it's like when you're 15 and playing with like your older brothers who are, 18, 19, 20 years old. They're just most likely going to be better than you, even if you're just like the best 15-year-old, because they're just bigger, stronger. They've been there. They know what's up. And so that is the one thing that is, hurts Purdy's case in that regard, or just makes him look worse than he actually really is, because he's just surrounded by people who just truly understand the game and know how to get it all done. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that they're just doing everything to make Purdy, to like manage Purdy. What Colin is essentially saying is that they have to manage Purdy and his limitations. And I just don't think that's completely fair. I don't think Purdy is, the second best quarterback in the NFL right now, right? Or people are saying that he's the best quarterback in the NFC right now. And I'm just not necessarily going to make that statement, especially considering the benefits of his team has been right now. Like I just said, having all those weapons. And people take such offense when you point out that they have such elite weapons. And it matters. And it's a great luxury to have. And all these winning quarterbacks have always had amazing luxuries. Whether it's having Andy Reid as your coach, Travis Kelce as your tight end, Tyreek Hill as your wide receiver, Gronk as your wide receiver, an amazing defense led by Bill Belichick. Like, everyone has to have these luxuries in order to win. No one just wins with with just a bunch of scrubs. It just doesn't happen. Or just like a bad coach. It just doesn't happen. And so I think at this point, you have to say that Purdy is doing some really amazing, awesome things. Has his gameplay been a little inconsistent at times? Absolutely. And I don't think you can deny that, especially if we just look at the playoffs, right? Those games have been inconsistent. But he's also shown that when the moment really calls for it, it's not so much that the 49ers, that the players around him are managing him, that they're doing everything they can to make his life easier. At times, yes, and to minimize some of, the inconsistencies, yes, like Brandon Ayuk making a great catch, low and away, and some of these other things, or Christian McCaffrey ripping off for like a 30-yard, yards after catch, sure, that obviously helps him. But no one helped Purdy, rip off for scrambling and making some of these amazing throws that he made in those games during the playoffs. No one is managing Purdy rip off for for first down runs and really big plays. Like, no one's helping that. I mean, he's thrown some amazing balls that you can't just say, well, that was all because of Shanahan, or that was all because of Debo. And that's not necessarily true either. In a lot of ways, they've been managing each other. And that's what I'll then also say, that if we want to play this game, then we can also say that Andy Reid has managed Patrick Mahomes to a lot of success. That when Patrick Mahomes started throwing a lot of interceptions and was getting kind of wonky, Andy Reid was like, whoa, let's chill out. We don't have to keep doing this. Just because you can do these things doesn't mean that you should do these things. And Andy Reid really helped Mahomes, become more refined and make smarter decisions and do those things. Well, we could also say that Kelce has made, in the Ravens game, Kelce had made some really big catches that were difficult catches, diving catches that weren't like the perfectly thrown ball that you would say, well, Travis Kelce managed Patrick Mahomes. And again, I'm not saying I necessarily believe that, but if we want to play that game, then it has to kind of go both ways. And for the record, Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, and it's not close. Patrick Mahomes, to me, is the best quarterback, without a doubt. Without a doubt, no question. So he is the number one quarterback. But again, even he needs things to go well around him, because like we just pointed out, when he has these drop passes, Patrick Mahomes' stats aren't as good, and the offense isn't as good. So you can only be as good as the people around you, no matter how amazing Patrick Mahomes is. So I just think that you have to kind of really look at it from all the angles, and it's just very easy to say, well, Patrick Mahomes is amazing, that's the end of story, boom, bam, boom. It's like, well, what kind of analysis is that? We know that's not the complete picture, because if that was the case, then Patrick Mahomes' numbers would be at the top 2, top 1 every single year, no matter who's on the roster. And we just got a front row seat to this year of that not being the case. So we know that can't be the full picture, So I'm not really understanding the argument right now.
There's a very different implementation with this. Mahomes is guiding and babysitting a team that entered the season without a number one receiver and arguably no number two. I mean, look at Mahomes' numbers down the field this year. His deep throw numbers have plummeted. Did he forget how to throw a deep ball? Does he no longer want to throw a deep ball? No, there's nobody to throw it to. His deep ball numbers have disappeared. Drops have exploded. You see a thread here? It's the wide receiver group. And he's doing all he can as a game manager to just sort of babysit and guide their way. We always said with our babysitter, don't call us unless the house is on fire. He's just trying to make sure the house isn't on fire in that offense. They're struggling to score. It's not the same with Purdy. They're the only team in the NFL, San Francisco, with a Pro Bowler at running back, wide receiver, tight end, and left tackle. They're the only one. I think there's an argument this is the greatest group of offensive talent at key positions ever. Trent Williams, left tackle, first ballot Hall of Fame. Running back McCaffrey, best in a generation. George Kittle, Hall of Famer, first ballot. Deebo Samuel, without question, the hardest, most unique wide receiver talent, the best chess piece in the league. And oh, by the way, Brandon Ayuk, way to go, John Lynch, GM. PFF had him as the number 2 receiver this year. All bonded by Kyle Shanahan, considered, along with Andy Reid, the best play designer and caller in the NFL.
And I don't disagree with those statements because those are just facts, right? Just pointing out all these great players. But Brock Purdy is succeeding with them. And they're not doing it in a way that's managing Brock Purdy. That's where I'm confused, because Brock Purdy, he's not this third-rate, quarterback right here. So I'm a little confused by this. I think many quarterbacks would succeed with this team because of how amazing it is, right? And I think if you throw Patrick Mahomes in there, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, any of these guys, they're going to have a lot of success. So yes, if you want to say that they have to manage the fact that Brock Purdy is not Patrick Mahomes, okay, I could understand that. But what kind of statement is that, right? Like, that doesn't really make sense. And so I think Brock Purdy is doing a really great job with those players. And so you just can't cast that aside. Having those players doesn't guarantee you success. I mean, we've seen plenty of quarterbacks have great weapons around them and they still just can't get the job done, or have a great quarterback or have a great coach, but still can't get the job done. We've seen that over the years. And so Brock Purdy has been able to consistently get the job done and, do it in a way where he doesn't have an elite defense. Not to say that the 49ers defense is bad, but it's not like elite compared to, say, what the Ravens were or even the Chiefs were. So they've obviously had to put up points. And don't get me wrong, like I keep saying, Brock Purdy is very fortunate to have the team around him, as Colin highlighted, and which is, again, you can't dispute that, even if you're the biggest 49ers fan there is. But you also can't keep using that as a way to just not give Brock Purdy any of this credit, especially when you saw what he did in the last 2 playoff games. And again, he did not play amazing games start to finish in those games. He just didn't. But neither had Patrick Mahomes in plenty playoff games, in the Super Bowl. And yet when he then does the highs, everyone celebrates him. And it is interesting as to when Brock Purdy plays an inconsistent game, but then still has some really big highs, why are people unwilling to give him that credit? And I'm really not sure why. I really don't. I don't know if maybe it's because people see Patrick Mahomes doing that with less. But again, is it really less when you have Andy freaking Reid as the head coach and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and, these big, huge players that are larger than life and also first ballot Hall of Fames? I mean, say what you will, because Colin just listed all of these Hall of Famers. And over the years, that's what Patrick Mahomes has had as well. He literally has the best offensive coach in the history of the NFL. That alone skyrockets you. Okay? And he also got to have Andy Reid after already, 15 plus years of coaching, of making the mistakes, of having to learn and grow. Shanahan is still learning and growing. Shanahan's an amazing head coach, but he's still learning and growing and making his own series of mistakes. It took Andy Reid 19 years to win a Super Bowl. So he had to make his mistakes and continue to learn and grow. And then again, he got Travis Kelce in his prime and got Tyreek Hill in his prime. And those are all really big things. Those are also first ballot Hall of Famers. So I just don't think you could just completely just say, well, just because you have all these great players around the 49ers, that we just have to say, well, they're just managing Brock Purdy. It's like, I don't think that's completely fair. I understand the pushback of saying that Brock Purdy is just like the best quarterback ever and he's going to take over the NFL. I understand that pushback. But I think when we're pushing too hard to the point where we're now trying to slam Brock Purdy like into the wall, and it's like, it's somewhere in the middle here. You know, it really is. But those are my thoughts on this. It just seems like this conversation is just not going to end, and I'm really curious to see how Brock Purdy plays in the Super Bowl and what that does for the conversation. Because if he just plays a pretty good game and they win, what does that say about Brock Purdy? If he plays pretty good but they lose, what does that say about Brock Purdy? If he plays amazing and they lose, what does that say about Brock Purdy? If they play amazing and he wins, what does that say? Seriously, like all the variations, I just think like, what does that say about Brock Purdy? Like, what can Brock Purdy truly do to prove that he is really great and good? Or what can Brock Purdy do to prove that he's not that good as some people believe he is? Because it's like, if he plays a bad game, they'll say, well, hey, everyone's allowed to have a bad game. Even Patrick Mahomes got beat in the Super Bowl and played bad. Or if he plays amazing, people will still say, well, yeah, but look at his team. Look at Shanahan. So it's just really curious. It just seems like the only thing that Brock Purdy can do to impress people is if he runs for like 100 yards and like 3 touchdowns. Only because that's seen as more individual, right? If he throws the ball, if Debo catches it, well, that's Debo's catching it. Or if McCaffrey rips off a big run, it's like, well, that's McCaffrey. If Ayuk catches the ball and he's wide open, it's like, well, that was great play calling by Shanahan. But now if Brock Purdy rips off for like 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, you know, kind of turns into Lamar Jackson, it's a lot harder than to say, well, that was Shanahan or that was Ayuk. You know, like, you can't do that. And again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it feels like that's like the only thing. It feels like the last game against the Detroit Lions, when he was ripping off for those runs and was scrambling and doing those things, it seemed like the biggest haters or people that were just unwilling to say how great Brock Purdy was, they had to at the very least tip their hat to that. So it seems like that's like the only way you can really get something out of them. But I can't wait until Sunday. I'm so excited. But so what do you guys all think? Let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we're building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.